In this edition of Low Code Feature Focus, we'll show how to use tokens to update your SQL database. So first, let's talk about our starting configuration and what we want to happen. I have a Plantain app application that has books, and one of the properties of a book is a view count. The change that I'd like to implement is that when we click into a book, the view count will update automatically so that when we return and look at the book again, the view count would be 1, and then 2, and then 3. This is just a simple implementation of updating a SQL database, just to illustrate the capability. To get started, let's take a look at SQL. So I'm going to open the persona bar and look at the SQL console, and I've already developed a SQL that will update my view count. This is a template of SQL. We're updating the book, we're setting the view count equal to view count plus 1, and then we're returning a blank value, which is something that's necessary when we get into my tokens. So let's test this out. When we run the script for book 1, it returns a blank, and when I refresh the books, I now see that the view count is 1. So this SQL template is going to be good for developing our token. Let's go out and copy that. And I'm going to get my SQL content and copy it. So this will serve as the template for our SQL. We now go into configuration and tokens, and we're going to create a new token. I'm going to work in the demo namespace, and I'm going to call this add to view count. And for the definition, I'm going to say it's a database query, and I'm just going to paste in my template SQL. So this template SQL, if we were to run it just as is, it's going to return a value called value, which is a blank, so we can save this and test it. If we run the test, it outputs nothing, but let's take a look at what happened on the other side. As we look at books, we can see that the view count has increased. It's now 3. If we go back to our token, add to view count and run it again, it will increment again. So now we go from 3 and look at books, and it's now 5 because I've run it 2 more times. So this token works, but it's tied to a particular book ID. So now we're going to make it dynamic. Returning again to configuration and tokens, we go and open the token, and we're going to edit add to view count. And instead of using the book ID of 1, we will instead use the special value TKN-PARAMS token params. It means that this token is going to require a parameter, and we're going to pass it in the book ID. So now when we save and test this, first it generates an error because we didn't give it a valid book ID, but we're going to pass in a book ID of 1, and it will run, and we'll also pass in a value of 3, and I'm going to run that twice. So now let's see what happens as we look at our books. We now see we have a count of 6 here and 2 here. This token can now impact any of the books that we have. So the hard part's already done. The token is built and it increments the view count. Now we just have to wire it so that when we dive into a book, that it increments automatically. So I am choosing to put this on my title form, and I'm going to open up the entity name and just include the token as part of the display of the name. It doesn't matter where the token gets displayed, just that it gets activated at some point in the viewing of a book. So notice that this is hard-coded to be book ID of 3. We don't want that. So instead, we're going to use the query string book ID. Notice it up here in the URL. So we're going to say query string : book ID. So whatever book ID that we're opening, that will be the book ID that will be passed into this token. So now we save it, and let's test it out. We go to books. Notice that for this book, the count is currently 2. We click in on it, the token evaluates automatically, and the view count goes to 3. If we look at a different book, this has 6, we click in on it, and it goes to 7. So we've now done the second part where we've wired the token to an action that accomplishes the goal we set out to do. So that's it. We've started from a SQL template, built a token, and then modified our form to activate the token at the appropriate time. Is there some feature you'd like to see in our next video? Leave a comment in the section below. For more great low-code content, be sure to subscribe to Plant an App.